Today I'm going to try to draw this waterfall in Tbilisi, Georgia, and this is actually right at the end of the botanical garden here, which is really vast and sprawling and beautiful. And originally, I'd planned on drawing something within the garden itself, maybe of a flower or some trees or whatever, but I wasn't ever content with anything, and it took me until literally reaching the exit on the opposite side that I figured I should probably get to drawing. In case you're new here, I'm learning to draw while traveling the world, and if that sounds cool to you, great. Subscribe. It will be worth it. I promise. So as you may know, this isn't my first foray into waterfalls. However, it is only my third, and my first attempt was only a couple of weeks ago. So while I've already got my feet wet, get it? Wet? Okay. I wouldn't say I know what I'm doing, which will be more than evident. But for now, I've spent some time building out the silhouette of the water itself, and that's kind of funny. I think if a complete beginner were to draw this same scene, they too would start this way, just going right ahead and drawing the shape of the waterfall. But then after learning a few things, that seems totally counterintuitive. When you realize that drawing the water actually means not really drawing it at all, but letting the surrounding context imply it in a sense, it feels like the last thing you would want to do is draw the waterfall. But then, I guess you learn a tiny bit more, and maybe the pure beginner was onto something after all. Maybe there's something to drawing the water, at least to some extent. I'm sure I'll carry on vacillating between these two things through the foreseeable future. But for now, today, I felt like it actually made a lot of sense to get this shape down immediately. And I'll tell you why. By starting here, I know where to not draw, kind of. So the edge of the water is less the water itself and more the edge of the areas around it. Maybe the difference is irrelevant in practice. A line is a line. Maybe it doesn't actually matter. But in the abstract, I think it helped me wrap my head around just the overall structure of the waterfall, where I could apply texture and where I couldn't, and the general composition of the scene. So not just the shapes, but like where things were moving and where they began and ended and all of that. So while it seems weird to go right for the waterfall itself, it made sense to me in the moment. As I observed this scene, I tried to notice as many small details as I could. So usually I'm paying attention to perspective and detail and whatnot, but with a scene like this, where everything you can see on screen is simply light and dark and that relationship, creating contrast and texture, there's a shift in mindset that's necessary to understand it. Rather than look for which direction a wall is facing so that I can accurately angle a window, I'm trying to discern which direction the rocks are facing and where the sun is coming from so I know which surfaces should be light or dark. Similarly, I'm trying to keep track of the flow of the water because that'll give me these islands or like ledges to put in its way so that I can sell its motion and its direction. To suggest the water, I chose to use these smooth, vertically flowing lines in contrast to mostly horizontal ones that I used for the rocks. That, again, seems like an obvious choice that a true beginner would make, but I think for something like this, from my still very much beginner perspective, don't get me wrong, it makes sense. Not only do I get to imply that directionality I was talking about, and yeah, that's probably a word, by slightly angling those straight vertical lines, but I also create a clear delineation between the different textures. Where the water stops and the rocks start isn't just a case of textural frequency, but also of type. And by the end, I think that worked in my favor. Speaking of by the end, this drawing didn't feel like it was going anywhere until somewhere around here. I'd spent a very long time working my way up to this point, and it was honestly just about finding my way. A lot of the stuff I've mentioned thus far was decided upon in real time and through slow experimentation. Because this is so texture heavy, I didn't spend much time working on it in my pocket sketchbook beforehand, so I largely went in blind. And this is why, literally this drawing is why I wanted to make these videos go by a little faster. And my drawings are a few days ahead of my edits, so that's why this isn't the first to be majorly sped up. But without the sort of arbitrary time constraint to which I was limiting myself, I can feel comfortable figuring things out. Before, I was always feeling really pressed for time, and that made the creative discovery a lot more difficult to come by. There was constant pressure to just do it, like get it over with and move on. And this drawing is the perfect representation of why that could be detrimental. So with this freedom, by relinquishing myself from such a strict constraint, I eventually realized that the key to creating this waterfall, bringing it out from the emptiness of the paper, was in building out everything around it, by really buttressing it with these surrounding rocks. Had I considered the clock the entire time, I would not have done that, and I wouldn't have found my way through it. Slowly but surely, this drawing materializes. It sort of grows outward from the paper, and it just took time for me to figure out how to make that happen. Maybe next time time won't constrain my figuring it out, but maybe, my technique or something. But regardless, feeling relaxed and not sweating each and every passing minute, I think will only help. I think constraints can be good, they can be great, but this one, for the most part, is one I'm happy to be free of. And there's my waterfall. I don't think it's as clear-cut as the first one. That was just a miracle, I guess. But I'd say it's a step up from the previous one. There's plenty more to do here, but not by me, and not today. Given another hour, apart from simply understanding more about the scene and how I might approach it in the future, I don't think there's anything I could have done to add to this without starting over. I just reached a point where I felt like I wasn't making the drawing any better, and that's when I called it. Overall, I'm pretty happy about this, and especially on the day, I felt like the second half of this was my saving grace. I think the power of the falls is implied well enough in the frothy water at the bottom, and I think those vertical lines actually worked out pretty well. The rocky texture could be a lot better. I'm not particularly happy with it. And the water at the very bottom, I still don't really understand how to do. But at the end of the day, this feels good to me. So let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel. And I don't know, try it for yourself if you want. You can use this as a reference. I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.